Just arrived in the apartment for the week. I will give you a quick tour around before we fill it with stuff, but it's really nice here. This place is honestly lovely. I feel like I have moved in already. I've put my few little things here. I have my candle and my books from home, and it's just the nicest room. I have hung up all the clothes on the clothes rail. It's just a gorgeous place. So I'm really excited to have a week here and to do lots of reading, hopefully. So I've done pretty well with reading on my way up here. I started listening to yet a different audiobook, so this is now my 4th or 5th book on the go, but I'm loving it so far. I started listening to Soulbinder, the 4th book in the Spellslinger series by Sebastian de Castell, narrated by Jo Jameson, and I'm really enjoying this one. I love this series. It's a really fun YA fantasy series. I'm, as I said, now up to the 4th book of 6, and I'm really enjoying how the story has progressed. The last book, Charmcaster, I think was actually my favourite of the series so far. I loved the progression of the characters and the development in kind of Kellen growing up, really, Kellen being our main character, and seeing him handle different situations and really just coming into his own and his particular brand of magic. So I'm very excited to be back in that world again already. I don't want to give any spoilers, obviously, of the story, but this one starts with Kellen and Rikus kind of off on their own and dealing with new challenges without their usual backup support. So I'm intrigued to see where this takes us so far. We've also met some new potentially villains, potentially just new interesting characters. We're yet to find out, so I'm really excited to read a little bit more of that one. I think, however, now I'm going to switch back to a physical book, and I'm going to take Oathbringer outside onto the little terrace here and go and do some reading and probably have a nice glass of wine and a relaxed evening at the start of my holiday. I'm actually on holiday for a week. It still hasn't fully sunk in yet. I can't believe that I won't be going back to work tomorrow, but I'm very glad that I'm not. So, I finished Oathbringer. I honestly don't know what to say about this book. It's taken me a while to compose my thoughts. I finished this about an hour ago and I feel like my head is still spinning. This book absolutely upped all of the stakes, all of the tension, everything about tenfold from the previous books. I didn't realise it was possible, but I just felt so much reading this book, this second half especially. It was just absolutely brilliant. I'm going to struggle to be eloquent enough to describe this book, but I think first and foremost, seeing the character development in this one, seeing the majority of our main characters struggling with the emotions and with this kind of internal battles against who they think they're supposed to be as characters and what their role in life is, and that kind of personality crisis, if you like, that I alluded to earlier. I've really, really enjoyed seeing that trouble that they had, not just against external battles but internal ones as well. I thought that was a very clever way for the book to go and a brilliant way to see development, and the amount of twists and turns in this story of things that you thought you knew about a character and then they completely flip on their head and act a very different way, or something happens in the action that you think there's no way they'll be able to dig their way out of, and then suddenly everything flips a 180 and goes in a very different direction, and suddenly you find that somebody's saved or somebody's different, or it was just an absolute roller coaster, this book, and I loved every single page of it. It was brilliant. There was a particularly big battle scene in this one as well, which personally I really enjoyed. I know that's not for everyone and might put some people off this book, but in my opinion it was very well written. It was one of those that's constantly flicking between different perspectives. So you had one particularly long chapter, I think it was about chapter 60 or something, that was much longer than the chapters usually are in these books, but that we had kind of broken into subsections where you follow a different character at their different vantage points of this battle throughout. And I thought that was such a clever way to be able to see the action from everyone's perspective, see all the different nuances that are really important to what's actually happening in the wider overarching outcome of the battle, but still follow on a personal level rather than just this row of soldiers does this and this enemy responds by doing this, which is a bit dry sometimes. It wasn't that kind of battle at all. And I was just absolutely engrossed in every single element of this. I couldn't wait to see what happened, and was at several occasions was just gasping and going, really? In shock. It was just incredible. So 5 out of 5 stars, in case you couldn't guess, for Oathbringer Part 2. I absolutely loved this, and I'm just so sad now that I'm not going to be able to pick up the sequel just yet. 1, because I'm on holiday, and 2, because I don't even own it physically at home. So I will have to try and get hold of it from my library, which it may not be available from straight away. And the paperback isn't released yet, so I can't just go and buy it from a shop, as I collect all these in paperbacks, as you can see. I was a little worried that finally finishing Oathbringer would put me in a slump again, because I've been so invested in this book and trying to draw it out over the past week or so to make sure that I savoured every moment of the plot, which was a good shout, by the way. It was definitely one to savour over a longer period of time and not just race through and miss some of the little details, which I probably am a little prone to do sometimes if I just devour a book in one sitting. But thankfully, I have not been slumpy because, 1, I'm on holiday and I have lots of time to read, so it's given me the opportunity to test out different things and see what I'm in the mood for. And what I was in the mood for today was carrying on with the audiobook of Soulbinder by Sebastian de Castell, the 4th in the Spellslinger series. I'm really, really enjoying this series. It's fantasy like this one, but a very, very different pace of fantasy, a different type completely. I mean, this is adult. Spellslinger is YA for starters, but also just the voice of the characters is very different. It's told in a more light-hearted way, and was exactly what I needed to have a bit of a change up from Sanderson, from Stormlight, just to change the pace and also change the format of reading. So I'm listening to Spellslinger series on audiobooks, and so I listened to a little bit more of Soulbinder today while out on a walk and in the car driving from place to place. I'm about 2/3 of the way through now, and I'm really, really loving this story. It's a little bit different than the rest of the Spellslinger series in the fact that our main character, Kellen, without giving any spoilers, is actually alone for a lot of this compared to his previous stories. He's not with his usual support group, if you like, of sidekicks and characters who teach him and help him out of difficulty and everything else. He's with a new group of characters that we meet after going off on a bit of a quest on his own, which I won't give away the plot for. But it's a really nice change up, really. You're seeing Kellen having to battle through taking on the advice that he's gained from all of these other companions he's had in the past and trying out all his different tricks and tactics and different types of magic to get himself out of the many scrapes which he finds himself in. I love the way these stories are told. He's so witty, and the use of language by Sebastian de Castell is really, really clever. Most of the story is told through dialogue or Kellen's internal monologue, which I really like and lends itself very well to reading this as an audiobook, which is great, as that's what I'm doing. And I have decided as well to be a little bit cheeky and use this book for the Magical Readathon prompt of the Magic School. I've forgotten which. I think it was the Aurelium Arch, is it called, the prompt, but reading a book set in a school setting, essentially. This one, for the majority of the story, is set in a place called the Ebony Abbey, in which Kellen is learning more about Shadow Black, about the kind of evil, for want of a better word, affliction that we meet in the first book. Again, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but he does meet a group of other young people. He's learning more about the Shadow Black and about the magic, so I'm going to tweak this one and say that that fits for that prompt. And so I have now pretty much completed one of the Magical Readathon prompts too, which is very good. I will hopefully fit the rest of this book in either this evening or tomorrow, so that will be another one ticked off. So we'll be up to 3 by then. I'm doing really well all of a sudden. I did realise this was going to happen actually, that as soon as I got on holiday I would start ticking off books at a much faster rate. So I think that is enough rambling for this evening. I've talked a lot there, but I just had a lot of feelings to share about Oathbringer. Next, I think I'm going to pick up The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan, the next Wheel of Time book, which I've also brought away with me and is another absolute beast. It's even longer than Oathbringer. It's, I think, nearly 900 pages, so wish me luck. But that's the next one I shall pick up. I think I might go out onto the terrace a little bit and read some of that now. It's still quite a nice evening. It's quite bright and sunny outside, as you can probably see with the dodgy lighting up here. I love this attic room, but the lighting is shocking for filming. But there we go. So a little bit more reading this evening, and I will check in with you again tomorrow once I'm out and about again, and hopefully reading some more. perfect spot for a vlog update. I am on the most gorgeous beach at Bamborough with the castle that you can see behind me, and I'm about to start reading, sitting on the beach, The Pagan Lord by Bernard Cornwell. This is the next book in the Last Kingdom series, and the ancestral home of the main character Uhtred is actually this castle you see behind me, Bebbanburg. It's really, really exciting to be here. I love reading books in locations that are set kind of within the story. It just adds that other level of enjoyment for me. It's really, really exciting, and this is one of my favourite places. I love this, having a castle on the beach, the most beautiful sand dunes. It's just incredible here, so I look forward to doing some reading and drinking in all of the beautiful atmosphere. So I am now back from my beautiful day out at Bamborough Castle and Lindisfarne, and I am very pleased to report that I am about 3/4 of the way through reading The Pagan Lord. Considering I only started that this morning, I consider that a very, very good day's reading so far. I had planned all along to read this book mainly on the day when I visit these places because, as I've said before, it's very poignant to the story. It's an area which is important to our main character Uhtred and to the storyline in general, and actually part of the plot of this book does feature that area. It does. Our main characters go to Bebbanburg, as it's called back then, and travel the seas around the area, and it's all just very relevant, and I absolutely love it when that happens with a book. I always tend to read books that are in some way related to where I am on holiday, if at all possible, so it gets top marks for that. First of all, I'm really enjoying this book. It's lovely to be back in this series and in this world. I really like Bernard Cornwell's writing style. I've read a lot of books by him, not just this series, but some of his other historical fiction as well, and I always find his books really easy to get into and a really nice, accessible voice in the story. Gosh, sorry, my hair is an absolute state. I've been very battered by the wind today, as you can see from my quite red face. It was a little bit wild on the island, but absolutely beautiful, so definitely worth it. But yeah, so just to give you a little bit of backstory about this particular book series, obviously this is book 6, so I can't tell you the plot of this particular one, but the series in general follows a character called Uhtred, who at the start of the first book is about a 10 or 11-year-old boy who is the son of the king of one of the kingdoms of Northumbria, which is now kind of Northumberland and the wider area. So the country back then, England didn't exist as it was. This is like the 900s or something AD, so very, very long time ago. So England, as it is now, is split into about 5 different kingdoms. You've got Northumbria in the northeast, Cumberland, I believe, in the northwest, Mercia in the middle, Wessex in the south, and East Anglia kind of in the southeast. So these are kind of the main kingdoms. Our main character, as I said, comes from Northumbria. His father is the king, but at the very beginning of the first book, you have an invasion of the Danes from, well, kind of Viking invaders, basically, but they call them the Danes in this one, from Denmark, who come across the sea and raid the area and kill Uhtred's father and take over the whole area. In the process of which they take Uhtred as a captive, and he grows up with the Danes and learns how to be a warrior, and the story very much goes from there. So you're always following his exploits with both the Danes and the Saxons, who were the indigenous people to what is now England at the time, and a lot of it focuses around the politics of King Alfred the Great, who you've probably heard of in English history if you know anything about that. And Uhtred, of course, is a fictional character, but the majority of the book is based on real historical events, which I think really makes it feel a lot more accessible, and you almost forget that Uhtred is fictional. You think that all of these things probably could have happened with a little bit of artistic license around the battles and things like that. They're beautifully written books. There is a lot of battle scenes and fights and kind of graphic details in some places, but that doesn't bother me at all. It wouldn't be for everyone, but I personally quite enjoy that, and I love the style, as I said, that Bernard Cornwell writes with. I love the voice of Uhtred. It's very much in his head a lot of the time and how he sees things, and I just find it really, really fascinating and a lovely glimpse of history along with a really action-packed storyline. So very much enjoying being back in this world, and I hope to carry on with the rest of the series very soon after finishing this one. So my plan is to finish this book this evening. As I said, I'm about 3/4 of the way through, so I have not got a huge amount left to read. So that will be a very good day's work, and yet another book off my September TBR ticked off. And then I will hopefully get a little bit more of The Fires of Heaven read tomorrow. I'm on to my last day of the holiday tomorrow. I'm so sad. I do not want to go home. I'm absolutely loving it up here, and I'm also loving how productive I am with my reading. It's making a lovely change to actually be getting through so much in a week. Clearly the answer is just that I need to be on holiday all the time. So I will check in with you again tomorrow and show you my last day of holiday and hopefully some more reading progress. Hello, so I'm just squeezing in a little bit of reading this morning before I head out for the day. I am currently making some progress through The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan. I'm about a third of the way through now, nearly half. Getting on pretty well with this one. And I'm having a really successful week of reading in general. I think I've been averaging about 300 pages a day, which is really, really good for me. I'm very pleased with that. That is a combination of physical books and audiobooks as well. And I am either completed or am part way through all of the books now that I've brought with me on holiday. So very successful week. Obviously, as I've said, I just need to spend more time on holiday to get all my reading done, because this has been peak productivity for me. And I'm so happy because recently I feel like I've hardly been reading anything. I've been really struggling to concentrate in the evenings after work, and I just haven't been inspired to be sitting down and reading constantly as much as I normally would do, just because I've been tired. So this is really very beneficial for my self-esteem, and I'm absolutely loving getting through so many stories as well. It's a really positive part of my holiday. So I finished last night reading The Pagan Lord by Bernard Cornwell. I got through that entire book in a day, which I was very happy to do. Sorry, it's suddenly gone really noisy outside with the traffic, but never mind. It's a very quiet road, this, but apparently not at this time of the morning. But yeah, so yesterday I finished off The Pagan Lord. I read the entirety of the book in the day, as I'd hoped I would do, because of being in the area that was very on theme for the content of the book. So we visited Bamborough, the castle which you saw yesterday, and then also the island of Lindisfarne, which was absolutely beautiful, and it's only accessible by a causeway which is tidal, so you end up being stuck on the island essentially, and it is a proper island for about 5 hours of the day, which was a really lovely experience. It's such a quiet place and was the perfect reading spot. So I got through quite a lot of my book there and then finished off the last 100 pages or so once I was back yesterday evening. I thoroughly enjoyed that book. I'm going to give it 4 stars. I was really, really happy to be back with that series, and now I'm definitely spurred on to read some more books in the series. I do own the entire series up to date, I think, or maybe not the most recently published one, but many more books in the series anyway are on my TBR, so I really hope I can get to some of those soon, because I was really happy, as I said, to be back with those characters, back with the writing style. I think that's my favourite part about these books, is the way that Bernard Cornwell writes, and his inner voice, if you like, of Uhtred, our main character. I love the descriptions of how all the battles worked and the kind of clan mentality. I love the historical element. I feel like I learn a lot by reading these books, even though big parts of the story obviously are fictional. You do learn a lot about the historical events of the time and the political side of things. And I just think they're really good books. They're really well written. Definitely not for everyone. As I said, they're quite graphic in places. There's a lot of fighting scenes and descriptions of that kind of thing. So if you're not at all into battles, don't read these. But if you can appreciate that and you like to learn about history and you want a really feisty main character, definitely give these a try, because they are very good. And I would also recommend the TV series, The Last Kingdom, that is based on the books. It's a very good way to consume these stories if you're not so into reading them, but you quite like watching that kind of stuff. It's a really good series. Anyway, so as I said, I'm carrying on with The Fires of Heaven this morning. I have a little bit more of that probably to read this morning. I might get another 10-15 minutes or so, and then we will head out for the day. And then I also have The Jungle Book to finish. I started a little bit of that last night once I'd finished The Pagan Lord. I still was in the mood for reading, so I read about half an hour of that. So I think about 50 pages. It's a very quick read. It's very cute. I will give you my thoughts on that one later, probably when I finish the whole thing and just kind of wrap up the book in one. But it's lovely to read that one again after so many years. I'm pretty sure I read it at primary school, but that was a long time ago. So I'm liking being back with that story, and also having the visuals from from the various film versions of Jungle Book as well that I've seen. It's nice to be able to put that in while I'm reading. So yeah, it's a fun one. And I'm also still reading... Will you be quiet? I'm also still reading the audiobook of King of Thorns as well, so I should probably listen to a little bit more of that today while I'm out and about. So there we are, morning update done. I feel like I'm doing very rambly updates on holiday, but never mind, it's fitting them in where I can. There is also a lot of B-roll this week, so I guess you're getting a balance of both. So I will head out shortly after I've read another chapter or so and catch up with you again a little bit later on. This forest is just so atmospheric. It's really, really misty, and all you can hear is the drops of rain and the birds singing. You can see the mist through the trees behind me. It's really, really cool in here. I love it so much. I feel like I should be on some sort of fantasy quest through here, or stumbling across a witch's cottage or something. It's just the perfect imagination fuel. I really love places like this. Hello, so I'm very sad to report that I am almost home from holiday, and I really did not want it to be over just yet. It's really, really sad because I don't want to go back to work. I've had the most beautiful week away in Northumberland, seeing all of the scenery and being so productive with my reading. But that aside, it has to happen. I'm very happy to say that I have just finished listening to the audiobook of King of Thorns by Mark Lawrence, and I have had such a great time reading this book. I enjoyed it so much more than I thought I was going to. I knew I'd like it because I liked the first one, but I really, really enjoyed this second one. It's just so much cleverer than I remember. I don't know if the first one was like this as well and I just didn't appreciate it as much at the time, or if this one has just stepped up in all respects. I don't know, but I really, really enjoyed how clever this book was. I'm happy to report that, without giving away any spoilers, we have had somewhat of a redemption for our main character, Yorg. He is still not a very nice person. He still murders people all the time, but other aspects of his character are slightly being turned around as you see him age throughout this book. So he goes from being 14 in some aspects to being, I think, 18 or 19, so still a very young person, but considering we started the series with him at about 12 and still being a murderer, we have made some progress. And he is now thinking a little bit more about his actions and is a little bit more morally aware, and you can just see the general development, which is really, really good to see in the characters, and I'm liking him a lot more for that fact. The cast of side characters I still absolutely love. It's a really ragtag bunch of people, all of whom are very morally grey, but I just really enjoy it. It's brilliant. And the writing style as well, it's such a strange book because for the most part it's very much a fantasy. It's written like it's a fantasy in another world, and you would absolutely believe that. But occasionally you get references to like historic literature from our culture, and to even for songs or to place names and historical events, and it's just really odd juxtaposition of things that you wouldn't expect to work, but somehow it really does. It comes across as being very, very clever. So I absolutely loved that. And I've picked up on that a lot more in this book than the first one. As I said, I think elements were in the first book, but I didn't really pay attention to it so much then. Whereas in this one, I definitely have picked up on that a lot more, which again added to my enjoyment. I think the story was very, very clever. I loved the fact that it was told in split timelines, so part of it is at the beginning of the beginning of this timeline, shall we say, where York is still 14, and then the other half of it is when he's 18 and basically around the events of this one particular battle. So it's hard to explain this one without spoilers because it's the second in the series. But yes, on the whole, a very, very good book. It's close to a 5-star, to be honest. I think it's still going to be a 4, but I really, really liked it. I will think on it. It might actually bump up to a 5, but I'm now really excited to get to the next one. I need to get the audiobook, and I definitely want to carry on listening to them as audiobooks, this series. The first 2 I have, and they are brilliant. Once again, Joe Jameson is onto a winner. He's absolutely incredible. The voices he does in this one, the amount of different accents, and it's just incredible. So I definitely want the audiobook, but I think I will actually buy the full series as well in paperback form, because I want to read them again. I want to have them and study them more and figure out the intricacies of the story and how clever they actually are. So I'd probably better get going. We still have a couple of hours of journey left to get home, so I can't linger too long, but I just wanted to update you while my thoughts were fresh in my head. I will probably start another audiobook now for the last bit of the journey. I think I will probably start... I have the audiobook for the 6 Tudor Queens book that I want to pick up, the Anne Boleyn story, so I might start that one. It's either that one or Master Artificer, but I'm not in the mood to jump straight into another fantasy, especially as I'm still also reading physically The Fires of Heaven, the Wheel of Time book, so I think 3 fantasies that close in succession is a little bit too much. So I'll probably start listening to a little bit of Anne Boleyn. I still have an awful lot to read in September. I've been thinking on the journey home how many books I have left, and I've had a ridiculously productive week, but I do still have an awful lot left to read. So the more I can get done today while I'm still technically on holiday, the better things will go for me. I will, when I wrap this vlog up, when I'm back home later on, I will let you know what I've read and how many prompts I've fulfilled, how many I have left, things like that, and do a bit of like a halfway wrap up. But for now, I will leave that there. I will head off back home and see you again very soon. Hello, so it is Sunday evening, it is time to wrap up this vlog, and I thought I would take you through a bit of a summary of the books I've read so far this month and the prompts that they fulfil for the 2 readathons that I'm taking part in. This has been possibly my most successful reading week of this year so far. I am so pleased with the number of books that I've read. I really needed to be able to be on track with the readathons, but thankfully I have been able to be as productive as I had hoped, even more so really, and have completed a good number of books, so I have lots of prompts now ticked off and are feeling a lot better about this month and how things are going. So I'll read from this, so forgive me if I look down. So the first book that I completed this month was actually last week's book, but I will include that in here, and that was The Crocodile Tomb by Michelle Paver, and that was for the Bookoplathon prompt of short book, so a book under 300 pages. I think this was about 280 or something like that. And I have also used this for the Magical Readathon prompt of, I think it's the entrance prompt, the first one, which is a book that contains a map. This one had a map at the start, so is a good fit for both of those prompts. Then, starting with the books I finished this week, I first of all completed Oathbringer Part 2 by Brandon Sanderson. This was my Bookoplathon prompt for Big Book, being a book over 500 pages, and indeed this was, I think, about 800 pages. And I am also using it for the Magical Readathon prompt of The Tower of Rumination, which is a 5-star prediction. It was indeed a 5-star. It was one of my favourite books I've read for quite some time. I am absolutely loving this series and cannot wait to get to Rhythm of War, hopefully in October or November. The next one I completed was an audiobook that I listened to of Soulbinder by Sebastian de Castell, part of the Spellslinger series, so that was the book that I picked for Bookoplathon for my chance card of the Spellslinger series that I'd created for myself. My chance cards were all books to continue with in series. And that also I'm going to use for a Magical Readathon prompt, perhaps slightly stretching this one, but the prompt for the Academy of Aurelium, is Aurelium? Yeah, is a book with a school setting, and a large proportion of Soulbinder was set in this kind of magical academy called the Ebony Abbey, so I'm taking that as a fit. It kind of works. The next one I finished was The Pagan Lord by Bernard Cornwell, and this was just for Bookopoly, this one, and fit the prompt for the people buzzword. So you've got people, person, king, queen, and all that kind of word. Obviously Lord fits into that, so that one was a tick for Bookopoly again. Next one I completed, you see what I mean, I'm doing quite well this week, was King of Thorns by Mark Lawrence, which I also listened to as an audiobook. And this again fit prompts for 2 readathons, so it was the last letter of the book for the previous prompt when I played Bookopoly being the first letter of this book, so the one that came before gave me the book Home Before Dark, and then this obviously starts with a K, so that fits perfectly for that one. And then for Magical Readathon it counts for The Ruin of the Sky, which is a prompt that is a book containing some sort of supernatural element, and in this series of books we do have a couple of magical elements that are very supernatural, including necromancy, so I feel that that fits fairly well. There are also ghosts in this, so it seems fairly supernatural to me, so I'm going to make that one count. And then going to the books that I've started but haven't yet completed, just to let you know where I am with those, I am not far off finishing The Jungle Book by Rudyard Kipling. I will probably finish that one tonight, so I'm going to count that one in my completed tally for this week. And that was the Bookoplathon prompt for Cute, so being a children's classic, it felt very appropriate to me. And then for Magical Readathon, that one is counting as part of my character prompts, so the one for being a wildling is a book that is mainly set outside, and obviously The Jungle Book, if you know anything about the story, is set in a jungle, so it's very much outside. And then the two that I will be carrying over to next week is The Fires of Heaven by Robert Jordan, which is part of the Wheel of Time series, so fit for my chance card for continuing on with that series. I'm around halfway through this one. I'm really enjoying it, and I'm hoping I can get that one done over the next couple of days. And then finally a book which I only started today and I've only read a little bit of so far, again via audiobook, although I do have the physical copy on loan from my friend as well, and that is the Anne Boleyn book in the Six Tudor Queens series by, oh, who's that series by? Alison Weir. I always forget her name. Alison Weir. And this one was just a Bookopoly prompt for the colour of the previous book when I played it, matching the colour of the cover of this one. So the one before it was The Jungle Book, which is a very green cover, and Anne Boleyn has a very green cover too. So that one was that prompt. So that's everything I've read or am partially reading at the moment. It does leave me still with a fair number of books left to read, but I'm feeling a lot more on top of things than I was this time last week. So a very successful reading week with 5 books completed and 2 partially completed. I think this is the best week I've had all year, and I'm really happy about it. I've had the most amazing holiday on top of that. I absolutely didn't want to come home, but reality has to return at some point, and I hope I can carry on this reading productivity into next week and the rest of the month. And then we'll be on to spooky season, so there'll be even more incentive to read with all the exciting new books that I'm going to get to. I will be filming a TBR for October and maybe for November as well, as I have quite a lot of spooky books that I want to read, and some which are not books that I would normally be picking up, so stay tuned for that one. But for now, I will leave this vlog here. Thank you very much for watching as always. Give the video a like down below if you enjoyed it. Chat to me in the comments about any of the books I've read, anything else you'd like to talk to me about. Let me know how you're getting on with these readathons if you're taking part. And please consider subscribing if you'd like to see more content from me. It really means a lot. I will speak to you again very soon in another video, so goodbye for now.